What's good, YouTube? It's Real Foxkid here, and I've got a deck profile for TG Stun. I don't think I've ever actually done a deck profile for this deck. I've done like one video where I was dueling with it a long time ago, back in September. I just built the deck on a whim, just back when the TCG OCG split happened, because I like when TG Striker went to 2, I thought the deck had potential. And I just kept it together just because it's probably one of the only stun decks I really thoroughly enjoy. So, yeah, and I just rebuilt it on a whim yesterday just to have something else to play with, and it actually performed pretty well. I was playing with my teammate and friend, the Shapeworks, and he was running Dragon Ruler the first time, and I actually beat him pretty soundly, I think game 3, and then after that he switched to Yang Zhang, which is the deck coming out in Duelist Alliance that's kind of like TG Stun. And those games were tougher, but I think I managed to get through it. So yeah, it's definitely I wouldn't call it meta, I wouldn't call it tier 1, 2, 3 or anything, but it can definitely hold its own, and that's what I like about it. So yeah, let's get into it. So okay, there are 16 monsters, and there are 3 Rhino, 3 Werewolf, and 3 Striker. That's just the standard TG lineup. I know a lot of people only run 2 Striker, and I can understand why, because on his own he's really weak, just doesn't really do anything by himself, and he's not compatible with a lot of the stuff in the deck. But I like him at 3 just because he opens up more synchro plays like that, and those are like power plays that can get you through a lot of tough spots. So I'll honestly like having 3, and it also means like you don't really have to search them out to like do a power play like that. So because you're more likely to draw one. So overall, I like 3 Striker. I very much understand why some people only play 2. And yeah. And then I put in 3 Fire Hand, 3 Ice Hand. This is actually part of the reason I decided to rebuild TG Stun, because I was trying to think of decks where Fire and Ice Hand could work besides like Hat and people who tech them in Girgia and Madolche and everything else. So, well, I was thinking, like, well, what works like Fire and Ice Hand? And I was like, well, they float when they're destroyed, and I was like, so do the TGs. So I was like, well, they probably work well together. So I put them in. They're actually really good because between the 9 TGs and the 6 hands, that's 15 monsters that upon destruction will float into another monster. So you should never be without a monster at any point with this deck. And I don't, like, in the games I've played with it, I don't think I've ever had a point where I just looked at my hand and my field and said, I don't have a monster. So the hands work really well in this deck. And then my last monster is just attack. I put in Neospatian Grandmole because he's good non-targeting, non-destruction removal that can just get rid of a lot of threats, and he's like reusable, obviously. I am actually really glad I put him in, because when I was playing against Yang Zhang yesterday, my teammate got a Leo out that had 3,600 attack and could not be affected by trap cards, and obviously it can't be targeted. So I was like, well, how the hell am I supposed to get over this? And then I top decked and drew Grandmole and started to laugh because I was like, I forgot I put this in the deck. And I played it, bounced Leo back into his deck, and then I won the duel after that because like Leo was the only thing getting in my way. So this card is amazing. I actually really like it in the deck. And that's the monster lineup. I cut a lot of things that a lot of TG Stone players run because I cut Barbaros, I cut Hazy Flame Cerberus, and I cut Thunder King. And then there's also like Fencing Fire Ferret and Tengu, but nobody really runs those anymore because there's usually better options, and those would be the hands. I cut Barbaros and Cerberus because they rely on skill drain. Cerberus especially really relies on skill drain because otherwise he has 1,000 attack, and that's awful. I cut skill drain because honestly I just don't think skill drain is very good in this format because it hits Girgia and then it dies to hands, and that's pretty much the story of skill drain. So I don't think it's very worth it. And just without skill those cards they're not good to run. And also I don't like the idea of having monsters that are relying on a specific card in my deck, because TG stun as a stun deck, everything should be able to work on its own, and that's just having cards that only work with other cards just kind of counteracts that. So even when Skill Drain was considered a good card for the deck, I didn't really like Hazy Flame or worse in the deck. So yeah. And then that's the monster line. 16 spells. I only run 4, and they're 3 Duality and Dichotomy, and that's really all you need. And Dichotomy is very easy to play because there's 6 different types in the deck. The 3 TGs, the 2 hands, and Grand Mole are all different types. So Dichotomy is extremely easy to play. I would probably run 2 if I had to, but Dichotomy is expensive, so I only run 1. And for traps, there are 20, because just that's the idea of TG stones. You have this constant supply of monsters, so you don't really need to. You can invest a lot of space in traps, and that's how the deck wins. So, 3 Blackhorn. I explained in my hat video about why I like triple Blackhorn right now. So yeah, just 1 Bottomless, 1 Compulse, 2 Deep Prison, 3 Fiendish Chain. I think this card is better than Breakthrough Skill in like back row heavy decks, which I think a lot of people caught on to because of at ARG Milwaukee, most of the Gear Gear decks were running Fiendish Chain instead of Breakthrough Skill. And it's because like in like defensive back row heavy decks and stun decks like that, you want like the extra defense that Fiendish Chain gives because it negates effects and it stops attacks. Whereas if you're playing a more aggressive deck and where you only really want to negate effects, that's where Breakthrough Skill comes in. Or like if you want to get through something that's holding you back, Breakthrough Skill will do that. But for this deck, Fiendish Chain is definitely better in my opinion. 3 Horn of the Phantom Beast to boost your roll rolls and Rhinos up a lot. And just extra draw power and damage stuff shenanigans. 1 Warning, 2 TG1. This is honestly, in my opinion, the selling point of TG. Because you can just play any TG in, like, even if it's like Striker, you can play Striker or Warwolf, switch it with your opponent's monster, kill it, and then get another TG in your hand, so you keep their monster and then you get a new one to replace yours. And it's just the fact that you also get to pick which monster you're taking as opposed to a creature swap makes this an incredibly good card in my opinion, and it's honestly one of my favorite things about the deck. And then I run 1 TGX3. This is pretty much just a replacement for Potted Dichotomy. Since I only have 1 of those, this kind of does the same thing. You just take any 3 TGs, put them back in the deck, and draw 2. It's not as good because it's a trap card and your choices are TGs, but overall, it does the job. So, 1 Torrential and 2 Wiretap. And then the extra deck, since it's a stun deck, the extra deck isn't as big of a deal. Like, you can have a little bit of freedom with it. This is what I thought was important. It's only 14. There's one I'm missing that I think is probably the most important thing to have. I just don't have it on me. So, yeah. For Xyz, I just went with the standard rank 4s, which are Dweller, Diamond Dire Wolf, Exciton, Black Ship, and Arc. And then I ran 2 rank 3s just because you can make them with Warwolf, and those are Alucard and Engineer. You don't really Xyz often, but it's nice to have the choice. So, yeah. And then for Synchros, I run 1 Gigantic Castle because the problem I was facing was that I couldn't really run over things that were big and had like protection, like Leo and Felgrin. So I was like, well, what can I run to get over that? And my first thought was Gigantic Castle because the deck makes level 9s very easily because all you need is Striker, Warwolf, and any of the other monsters in the deck. And then it makes a Gigantic Castle with 3,300 attack and just runs through things. So I like it. 1 Scrap, 1 Stardust Spark, and 2 generic level 8s. 1 Black Rose. With what's in the deck, you cannot make a level 7, but because you run TG1, and I was also considering running Mind Control, and I might still do it, you can just easily take a level 7 from your opponent, or if you have Warwolf Striker, you can take a level 2, and or you can take a level 5 or a level 2, and then that gives you options to make a 7. So just having Black Rose as that possibility is important, especially with like artifacts running around. You can take a Moral Talk. And then I run HCS Behemoth, and then for 5s I run Catastor and Armades. I was considering Wonder Magician and Power Gladiator, like the 2 TG Synchros, And I cut Power Glider because overall, honestly, you're more likely to make Armades, same stats, better effect. And I don't have a Wonder Magician, honestly. In a lot of places where I summon her, I also probably summon Armades, so I don't really think they're needed. The one synchro that I think is definitely needed, and I just don't have on me, is Naturia Barkion, because you can summon her off of Striker and War or Rhino, and then you lock out all trap cards, which is kind of big in a format where people are running 15 to 20 trap cards. So yeah, I would definitely run Barkion. And I don't have a side deck build because I just threw this together quickly. And honestly, side deck's pretty simple. Probably make one very similar to the one I have for Hat. So yeah. And that's the whole deck. It honestly works pretty well. It's definitely one of my favorite decks ever. So yeah. And thanks for watching YouTube. I'll see you next time. Cheers.